So, hello everyone, welcome to the 11th APECS Portugal workshop that this year is about art and science, your research through image. I am Carmen Souza and I will be chair of this session with Ricardo Matias.
Hello.
We are members of APECS Portugal committee. I inform you that this session will be recorded. Please turn off your microphone in the beginning and during the presentation. In the end of the presentation, if you have any questions, please raise your hand by clicking on hand symbol that appears in your screen or write the question on chat. If anyone has some problems or doubts during this session, please contact us by chat. In the end of the session, we will take a group photo. Now let me introduce our speaker for our second session of this morning, Fiammetta Ghedini. She works on the frontier between science and communication with a focus on drawing and illustration. In 2011, Fiammetta did PhD at the Scuola Superiore Santa Anna in Italy and was visiting researcher at University College of London under supervision of Professor Semyuzeki. Her thesis was entitled The Illusion of Ambiguity from Vestibular Perception to Anthropomorphism, that merge neuroscience, art, and human interaction with technologies. Since she has worked with universities and educational institutions around the world to illustrate science via drawing and video at the Sony Computer Science Laboratories in Paris, Goldsmiths University, University College of London, City University of New York, and EES, visual arts agency dedicated to science communication. Thank you, Fiammetta, for accepting our invitation and for being here. Please go ahead.
Please don't hesitate to write in the chat, and you can also write while I'm speaking. I would really like this to be a dialogue. So, yes, we will talk about visual storytelling for science. So basically, we will talk about stories and images and illustrations, and I really would love to also try to have some interaction with you all and try to actually create some stories and even some illustrations with you. And that's why I ask you, and I hope it's the case, at least some of you have an abstract or a research topic in mind, maybe the research topic of your PhD, because I saw that there are a lot of PhD students among you. So I will just introduce myself a little bit and talk to you about my path. And because it has been kind of a tortuous path. It was not straightforward at all to find myself working in science communication, because I think that I kind of thought again about my career, let's say, my studies choice when before doing this workshop, and I think that I always try to find a communication or find something like a bridge between art and science, in the sense that I was never sure about what to study. For example, at the university, I really wanted to study something, hard science like physics or math. At the same time, I really wanted to study literature, and I ended up studying literature. And then, but then I always had some kind of longing for doing something more scientific, and really tried in a lot of ways to find the bridge between art and science. And so to do so, I tried a lot of methods, I would say. I tried in many ways, and I really like comics, drawings, art in general. So as a first thing, for example, I began to work in a robotic lab in Pisa, at the Scuola Sant'Anna. This lab is called Perceptual Robotic Labs, and I were doing haptic interfaces for museums. So, uh, simulations of tact when interacting, for example, with sculptures or 3D objects, virtual environments. So there was a lot of perceptual studies involved. And that's where I began my PhD, as Carmen was saying, in perception. And there again I tried to find this bridge between art and science. At the beginning it was art and robotics, and then it began to morph in art and neuroscience, something like that. I went to London to study with this professor Samit Zeki, who is kind of famous because in the 70s he discovered V5, which is the area of the brain that processes colors. And afterwards, after becoming famous, let's say, he founded an area of neuroscience which is called neuroaesthetics. So he was trying to understand what is going on in the brain with something beautiful, let's say. Um, he works a lot with functional MRI, so he basically tries to see where the blood is going in the brain when we see things. So he works with fMRI, and I work with him and did my PhD about optical illusion. And then that was yet another way, a trial to try to, create this famous bridge. And it kind of didn't work at all. I had the impression that I was not getting something whole and good, neither out of art, neither out of science, doing this kind of hybrid research. And then I thought, okay, so what I really like is comics and drawing and telling things. So maybe I can just, in a more simple way, in a way, apply it to science. And at that point, I was living in Italy. I came to live in Paris, where I'm now. It has been 9 years now. And I began to work in a lab called the Sony CSL Computer Science Lab. And there I began to work with a researcher, François Paché, who had an ERC. I don't know if you know what is an ERC, but I think so. It's a it's a scholarship. It's a very important and big scholarship that is given to individual researchers. So not to collaborative research projects, but really to one researcher who has an idea which is usually quite visionary, someone who really wants to do something different. And his project was called Flow Machines, and his goal was to compose the first song with artificial intelligence, so AI for creativity. And I thought, okay, so maybe what I can try to do is to do a comic about this project, about his research. So people working with me were, like, yes, let's go for it. And and so this is 2 pages of the comics that we did. And how did we do it? We, as you can see in the first panel, we were discussing a lot, discussing. We were doing meetings, as you do meetings in research, and just sit there and talk, and it was very interesting, but it also was kind of tiresome. And we had a lot of ideas and a lot of directions, and you would never know where to go. You have, okay, this thing is important, this algorithm works like this, and then so maybe you can translate it in a visual way like this, and then But how can you communicate about music? Because it's very abstract. AI is abstract and music is abstract. So, okay, so maybe we can talk about visual art as an analogy or a metaphor. And we've been going on like for 1 year, I think, just discussing about it. Then we, when we were in this process, the ERC, so the European Research Council, the council that gives the scholarship to researchers in every domain, they published a call for proposal for communication about ERC projects. And I wrote a proposal, and which was called ERC Comics, and it got funded. I was very surprised actually. I didn't think that it could be possible, but they funded a 4-year research project to do comics about 18 research projects. So we have 18 research. I can just show you the website. I think that you see my screen, and I will just cut and paste the website address in the chat. So this was ERC Comics. The difference between what I was doing before with the Flow Machine project and the comic was called Max Order, by the way, and you can find it here in among all the other ERC comics, was to work with actual artists, so with really comic authors. That was the job of the people we were working with, and couple them and match them with researchers. And when I'm saying we, it was me and a colleague of mine who was working in a communication agency in Paris, a communication agency which is called La Bande Destinée, and that uses comics to communicate. But he never worked with the research or science. He was working really with institutions or private companies. So we try to merge to do this project, ERC Comics. Of course, we learned really a lot of things, and we created more than 800 pages of comics, and they are all available online at erccomics.com. You can check it and you can read it. It has been a very nice success, I have to say, and all the researchers were super happy, and the artists as well. But I cannot really talk a lot about this. I will just wrap it up. And so the project was over in 2019, and now I founded an agency which is called the Viva Illustrations, and that you can find the website vivaillustrations.org at this address. Viva is research and innovation through visual arts. And well, now what I do in this agency is really talk to scientists, try to understand their messages, what they want to convey, their research, their results, and then put them in contact with artists, illustrators, comic artists, or animators, and create this famous bridge between the art and science to produce communication material, basically to produce art. So this work is based basically on two aspects. As I was saying at the beginning, and I would like to talk to you about this today. It's about stories and about images, illustrations, comics, etc. So let's talk about stories. When I meet for the first time a researcher from every domain, so you can really go from physics to maths to sociology to really whatever, polar science, really whatever. Usually the researcher is really, can you see the whole screen? Because, okay. Is communicating with a lot of jargon, of technical terms, putting the accent on things that usually I don't understand. If I don't understand it, it means that also the general public won't. The message is never very clear, the message that the researcher wants to convey. So the first thing that I have to do to begin this dialogue is to find an overlapping in this dialogue. So find something that he or she says that I can understand. In this way, I can tell something about it. And this overlapping area, this blue thing, it's stories to me. It's really about stories. Why? Because I think that the stories are really something that is really, really part of our DNA. It's really like the basis of civilization, basically. All the civilizations have stories and they all look like. And something, and our brain is really hardwired to understand and to think in terms of stories, of storytelling. So for instance, I will tell you very briefly about an experiment of this guy, Hassan, working at the NYU, New York University, which a little bit like my my ex-thesis director, Professor Semir Zeki. He kind of looks what happens in the brain when you see things, looking at the blood flows. And he did this experiment in 2008, I think, which became quite famous. He shown people Hitchcock movie, then The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly by Sergio Leone, and then Curb Your Enthusiasm, and then video sequences of Washington Square Park. So you had big video sequences in which people were just, strolling around, walking, sitting on the banks, pigeons flying, whatever. And he looked at what happened in people's brain where they were watching. And here in the green image of the fMRI, you can see the overlapping of people active. This is the overlapping, okay? So it's literally this thing, this overlapping, but in terms of brain activity. In the first case, you can see the overlapping of the brain activity among all the participants watching a film by Alfred Hitchcock. So it means that everybody during probably, I think, an action scene was feeling and thinking maybe basically the same thing. And this here, down here, is the overlapping while people, subjects were watching the Washington Square Park video sequence footage. So this means that while people were watching Hitchcock, they were probably thinking the same thing, like, is he or she getting shot? Or is it, will he manage to escape or whatever? And they were feeling in the same way. And where people, they were watching the Washington Square footage, they were like probably thinking about their own things, noticing different things in the footage for sure. One person was looking at the someone sitting on a bench. Other people were looking at the pigeons. Some people were thinking about their thesis supervisor, the researcher, what to have for dinner. And the overlapping was small. So this is just to tell you that we're really thinking in terms of stories. And many scholars have studied the structure of stories. And the structure of stories is, I don't know if you have ever thought about it, but it's really the same in every culture and since the dawn of time. And for instance, there is a Russian structuralist scholar that in the, I don't know, at the beginning of the past century, I think, he was called Prop, and he tried to make a model of every story. He was working with the traditional folk tales, And it was really always the same. And if you think about it, the structure of the stories is the same in fairy tale and in mythology, as in, for instance, in series, modern everyday series that you watch on Netflix. It's always, always, always the same thing. For blockbuster, then artsy movies or stories, they kind of play with this template, and they try to disrupt it a little bit, usually, not so much usually, but you always you begin with the status quo. uh, so there is an initial situation, then you have a call to action. The hero is called to do something. So the hero has a quest. The hero starts a journey, which can be, uh, let's say, metaphorical, but usually it's really a physical journey. It goes somewhere, do things, and then you have trials. You have problems, and for instance, enemies or problems that the hero has to face. Um, Usually this part here, so the entering in the special world, is repeated. So you have a problem to be solved, then you have another problem to be solved, blah, 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 blah. It just repeats in a cycle of action. And then usually you have one big trial, one big crisis, and then you have a take-home message. The hero learns something, usually from a failure, and then he goes back to the status quo. She or he goes back home, but with a different knowledge, knowing something more, having more experience, being a different person in a way. This is another version of basically the same thing. It's not a Russian scholar, it's an American scholar, Joseph Campbell, who was a mythologist. He was studying myths, and he wrote this kind of decalogue. It's 9 points, it's not 10, but and as you can see, it's really really the same thing that is happening in every movie and series that you've watched. In an ordinary world, a flawed protagonist, the protagonist is almost always flawed, because otherwise the story would be really boring. If the protagonist would not be flawed, he or she would just win every time during the course of action that is going to come later. For example, Achille had the Achilles heel. He literally had one part of his body who was flawed and was vulnerable, while he was completely invulnerable on the rest of his body. Then there is a catalytic event that upends the world, so create something different, a dynamic in the world of the hero. And the hero decided to take action, and then there are trials and problems and enemies to be faced. The protagonist must learn the lesson in order to stop the antagonist one final time, or solve the problem, and to achieve his or her goal. So now you may be thinking that what this has to do with research. All this, talking about Netflix series. It's not what we do, it's not what, or rather you do, it's not research. But if you think about it, even a paper, a very classic paper, is always composed of the same section. And this is IMRAD, is Introduction, Methods, Research, and Discussion. So if you think of the, the way a paper is composed, the next time you read or you write a paper, it's actually, there are a lot of similarities with the story main structure, because you have introduction. The introduction is the status quo, the state of the art, the literature. You have a call to action, which is, okay, there is this thing that we don't know and we want to find out, and we are going to do in this way, methods. And then the research is the beginning of the special world, so it's the departure. Let's do it. Let's see what happens. and the trials and the approach and the crisis. So let's try this. Does it work? Yes, no. Okay, so let's go on and test. And then the discussion is going back home with a new knowledge, a new experience, a new resolution. So, something more to add to the status quo, to the state of the art. So all this means, so how to use this knowledge for example, next time that you have to write a paper, or to even better, maybe to do a presentation, to prepare a PowerPoint presentation. Well, it may seem complicated and kind of very abstract, but there is a template actually, and I've been spending like 10 years like like this, discussing a lot and trying to trying to understand things. And after 10 years of experience trying to make up stories, trying to find a way to communicate science, I stumbled upon a book which is called Houston, We Have a Narrative by Randy Olson. I can send you the references later on. And this book had this very, very simple template to translate research into some kind of very simple story. And I actually use it every day now with Riva when I have, for example, to write a script for an animation. And this script, I think this Randy Olson, he took it from the script writer of South Park, the cartoon, is ABT, and it means and, but, therefore. And the method is really, it's simple. I mean, it's simple to say than to do it. It takes time and experience. But the idea is really to substitute all the a and with but and therefore. So what a is just, a story which is boring. You just add the facts and facts and facts. In a scientific paper, usually you do the DYH, which is despite yet, however, which is a more convoluted and complicated way of telling things. But if you really think in terms of and, but, and therefore, you actually exploit this structure. So the and is your state of the art, the things that you know, the status quo, but is the thing that you don't know. And therefore is what are you going to do about it? Is to face your hypothesis, your problem, and test it and do your research. So I will just give you an example. In February, just before the lockdown and the pandemic, I went to Seattle to AAAS with two artists that collaborate with me with Riva illustrations, and they were author of Heroes Comics, Lorenzo Pallone and Francesco Vernaccia. And we were asked to draw in real time for 36, I think 36 talks. So we were very nervous because like the keynote was Bill Gates, and it was really a big deal. We were in Seattle and there were a lot of public. We had to, I don't know, draw in real time, illustrate what the scientists were talking about. The main theme was envisioning tomorrow's Earth. So there were a lot of presentations about climate change, climate modeling. So we were in touch with each of us was in touch with our researchers, so the people that were going to to present their paper while we were drawing, and we asked them for the PowerPoint presentation in advance, of course. So I will just give you an example of one conclusions slide that Thomas Jung, who is a researcher who works in a research collaborative project called applicate.eu, which is about polar science. and modeling. And here I have the website about advanced prediction in polar regions and beyond, so maybe you know it. And I chose, of course, I chose this example because maybe it can, speak to you. It can be interesting for you because it's your research area. So I got this slide. Changes in Arctic sea ice have the potential to influence mid-latitude weather, medium confidence, but there is low confidence in the detection of this influence for specific weather types, IPCC, SROCC, I don't know what it means. Then bullet points, which is a little bit of a and structure, correct for dynamical response jet stream, not quite so true for the thermodynamic response. We know more than some might think. This is it's a however structure. Hypothesis, which is more like a thesis to me. It's more like a therefore. Not everything is forced from the Arctic in the real world. Model shortcomings might underestimate the response. New class of high resolution models might make all the difference. This is definitely therefore it's our solution because quantitative knowledge within reach. So I've been, exchanged it with Thomas about his presentation by mail. And I don't know a lot about polar science really. So he was very nice and kind. I really tried to help you understand. And what I did is what I do with researchers when I work with Riv as well, is try to take all his presentation and condense it, make it short, and using an ABT model template. So trying to transform this concept into a short text ABT. So, so this is the result. We know that the Arctic ice cap is melting. So this is the end part. This the status quo is the state of the art. And we know that changes in Arctic sea ice have the potential. So medium confidence. We don't know for sure, but we know that they have the potential to influence mid-latitude weather, causing cold weather in North America and in Europe. But, and this is our problem, it's our enemy to be faced, the gulf between observational and modeling studies is huge. So what you observe is different from you can project with modeling. So there is low confidence in the detection of this influence. So we don't know, but we know that it may be, but we actually don't know because there is a gap. There is a contradiction between two things, observation and modeling. Therefore, and we have what we can do about it, it's our action. We must research this topic and understand if causality is mistaken in observation. So if the observation of the real world tells us, yeah, this is because of the Arctic, but maybe it's not because of the Arctic, or if models underestimate the response. So the models are telling us, no, this is not going to happen. The Arctic is not going to have this influence, but actually, yes, it does. And a new class of high resolution models might make all the difference. And this is our possible solution, not to leave the problem open and unsolved. So we have a path to follow. We have something that we can do. So now I would like to make a pause and try to discuss with you with the chat or with the video, maybe with an example that may come from you for, I don't know, 10 minutes or half an hour. If you have an abstract or a paper that you would like to translate into an ABT text. Carmen and Ricardo, may I leave the word to you and maybe try to find a way to interact with our attendees? I've never done it before on Zoom, so I don't know how it's going to be, but maybe we can try. And then we will talk about the illustration part. Carmen, Ricardo.
Yes, someone wants to share something.
Okay. Was without sound. Let me check.
Well, I can show you an abstract from a paper that I published recently, and maybe we can turn it into a story. I really would love that. But I'm not an early career scientist, so if there's someone who wants to do it first, please, I'll be the last one to do it.
We also have Agatha, if you want to share your abstract.
We can try to do it in real time. It's the first time that I do it, but we can try. We can see what happens.
Maybe we could find a way to give voice to.
If you send me the abstract on the chat, I can just paste it on the presentation so we can all read it.
Okay, I can do that. Just please wait a little bit. I'm trying to find the abstract.
Sure. Okay, so this is really not, I mean, it's something that it's a trial and error, so we are not going to be able to do, like this and transform it into and but therefore, but we can think about it all together, I think. And if you have some questions in the meanwhile.
Yeah, if someone has questions, can put in the chat or raise your hand.
Can I ask a question while I got to this uploading? Yeah, it's really, really interesting, the approach. I really like it. And actually, I'm trying to adopt this in the proposal. Can we try also with the proposal? Because it's not, I mean, it's not a finished work, right? So there is a combination of a lot of works. So do you also work with the proposals?
I think it's really important to do it with proposals, because with proposal you have to convince someone, basically. So it's even more important that with presentations or with papers that to be heard. So you really have to catch the attention of the reader and to convince him or her, convince them of something. You have to tell them this is important. It's really important because blah blah blah. So I personally, I don't really. I've never worked with. I mean, I participated a lot in grant proposal writing, but I never from this point of view. This I do it for science communication, but I think this exactly the same thing could be applied. Yes, absolutely.
Maybe we can try this. Well, we don't have much time now, but so I will contact you later, because it's.
Yeah, it's something that we can try to do. It's for sure. I think it makes writing more effective, and trying to do this thing to overlap with the reader's mind. You really can communicate and explain the importance of the work that you are doing or that you want to do, even if you don't have the results. Okay, so we have an abstract. I will just.
So, Fiammetta, we have. I just put on the chat the abstract of the paper.
Yes, I
if you find it, I have another option. It's a forward of a publication of a report for Polar Science. So if you think it's better, or if it's
as you prefer, I'm trying to paste this by Maria Teresa in the slide, but it's not working. I don't know why. I can. Here you are. As you wish.
Okay, so it can be that one.
Okay, let me make it a little bit smaller so we can all read it. Okay, so this basically will be something I will know strictly nothing about. So okay, so let me see. But
So this is mainly about dredging in estuaries that usually pollute the waters with trace elements like chromium, zinc, and copper. And when there's microalgae in the water,
what I didn't understand, what is dredging?
So dredging is an operation that essentially what it does is to remove sediments from the bottom of the estuaries of canals and areas where boats are or from harbors, you know, just to increase the depth of the water so the boats can come in and you know, so
okay.
When these sediments are removed by dredging, a lot of contaminants go into the water column.
Okay.
But the microalgae, which are like the algae we see on the beach, but they are microscopic, they take up these metals or these contaminants. And what we found out was that at the beginning of dredging, a great part of some of these contaminants was taken up by the phytoplankton, which has repercussions to, you know, for the fish that feed on the phytoplankton and all the other organisms. So this means that people have to take care of this problem. So to avoid dredging in periods when phytoplankton bloom in the water. So, because then the quantity of this contamination is much higher and it will eventually pass on to the fish and we eat on the fish. So it's a food chain problem.
Yes.
So this is the story of this abstract.
Yeah, I think that I was listening to you and not reading the abstract, but the way you tell it, you already have the story actually. Because let me see. So
I think that when we write a paper, we have to think about everything like a story. If you don't write it like a story, people will not get interested. You have to have a line of thinking, a very clear line of thinking. So when people read the paper, they will be interested in it.
yes, because it's a way to really catch the attention. And I think, okay, so maybe in the abstract, and this is, I'm telling you from, okay, so the paper is, of course, for other researchers, for fellow researchers. If I was working with you to make a comic or an illustration about this thing, I would, or an animation, maybe I would begin with an end, with a status quo that would really explain dredging and what is dredging, what are dredging operations, and for example, why they are useful, because we have to do it, because we have to let the, as far as I understand, the boat sail to the sea. So it's
something that we have to consider because it will be going on. So and it has a usefulness. So we have to make things sustainable. You know, you have to think about environmental problems and you have to think about development and economy. So. Yes, I think the beginning would have to tell that story first.
For example, sustainability, as you say, is a very good keyword because it's really tells the reader, okay, this is something that, as you were saying, it will go on. We cannot just stop dredging. Okay.
Exactly.
So we have to make it sustainable. So, and of course, your butt of your story, of course, is it's the pollution and the contaminants that
Exactly.
dredging causes. And then I think that you have maybe you have some kind of arch enemy. So you have an enemy which is the contaminants going on the beach and the metals, but then your arch enemy is the fact that this thing can come up to the alimentary chain.
Yes.
Is the thing that it's the problem is contaminants and metals
In the food chain.
but it's even worse when they get in the fish chain, because we are going to eat them basically.
Yeah, that's it. But
So
still, we have a solution. So we can get to the last part, and it's to minimize the problem by doing dredging in other periods of the year when there's not much phytoplankton in the water column. So it's a more or less happy ending.
So you have a therefore. So you have the research is allowing you to understand this thing, to allow to understand there are periods of the years in which you cannot do dredging or something like that, because there will be this big problem of getting contaminants up to the alimentary chain. Therefore, you offer a solution.
Okay.
So that would be the cycle, I think, of this story. In this abstract, for example, I don't see that. Therefore, I mean, you were telling me about this in a very clear way. This therefore, this okay, we can do avoid this thing, but I don't see, for example, this in the abstract. In the abstract, you really talk about the technical parts of what happens in the central part of your story. So what happens in your butt, beauty, what happens in this contamination process. Because you say during the peak of the phytoplankton bloom, blah 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 blah. So
yes,
maybe
this only means that phytoplankton is taking up several contaminants from the water column. So we see the concentration of these contaminants being reduced during that period.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So
I think you don't have the entire abstract. I don't know why it was cut. But
maybe
that's the story. That's what happens afterwards.
Maybe it's the chat. Yeah, it's the chat that maybe you just have a word limit or something like that.
Yeah.
But you have okay. So you have your conclusions here. So evidences such as the presence of an easily recognizable white in. Okay, so you have your conclusion. So, but yeah, I think that we have we have the story.
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
So that's just an example, but you already had it, kind of. But maybe you can, transpose it in your paper in a more explicit,
graphical way. So we can. What you suggest is when we have this structure finishing in therefore, we can then make the drawings. To think about the story in terms of visual drawings.
So this is the second part of my presentation. So I can just go on with this story about the climate, about warming in the Arctic causing, maybe, we don't know, cold weather in North America and in Europe. So I can show you the illustration part right away, the other part of my presentation. And I can just go on and then we can discuss again later if you want. We still have, I think, 45 minutes, right? so we still have a little bit of time. Mm, so so let's go back to the example that I was talking about, and when I will talk to you about the a kind of graphic recording style illustration, which is something that I did at AAAS in Seattle for this researcher, for example. Graphic recording is really some kind of visual notes that can translate your ABT structure into images. And I will just tell you about the process that I use to create this. And all the, what, I mean, the part, how can I tell you, the thinking process, the creative process. So as a first thing, usually I think about structure. The structure of this of the abstract was really a double structure. From one side, you have ice cap melting and warming, Arctic warming, and on the other side, you have cold weather somewhere else, North America and Europe. So I felt that there is this clear structure 1 and 2. And also something that maybe for you is obvious, for you experts in climate and in the Arctic sciences. But for me, it was not obvious at all. It was that something warm can cause something cold. And so this thing, I tried to translate it into colors. So trying to think of my structure, I made 2 colors, is red and some kind of red and some kind of blue. Because of course, colors have symbols that we all, and the meaning of colors, something that we all share. So red is warm and blue is cold. And I created this double structure. Then in terms of colors, if you want to create illustrations that can be for yourself, for example, to better understand and to better explain, to find a way to really explain in a simple way your research, or can be, for example, for your presentations, can be for a text, for your thesis, or really whatever. Okay, so shapes are important. So, and shapes, just like colors, can be used as symbols. So, for example, a rectangle or a square is a status quo, is a state of the art, is something stable, which just is there. And a shape like an arrow or a triangle is something changing, is something that goes toward a direction, of course. And for example, I use yellow for the arrow because yellow is a kind of a color that may convey a message of even danger, maybe, or something like, hey, something is going on here. Regarding the color palette, and of course, you could try to do some illustration just with, you could use pens and crayon, and or if you have a tablet, you can use the graphic tablet. But something that I really would like to tell you beforehand is really that knowing how to draw is not important, in the sense that a lot of people tell me, and it's a really common way of thinking, is that you cannot draw if you're not skilled. And a lot of people always tell like, no, but I'm not able to draw, I don't know anything about that. But this kind of drawing is not artistic drawing. Of course, an artist who draws, a comic artist, has to be skilled, and in that way, in that sense, drawing is a profession. So yes, it's a skill, but drawing is also drawing like stories is something that is very hardwired in us, and that's, I think, at least I think, it's why everybody draws when we are children. We all do it, and then somehow we lose it, And I think that we lose it because of this thing of this sort of need to think that it's a skill, and we begin to think that we are not able to do it and we stop. But drawing is actually is not only a very nice way to make things understandable, it's also a way to understand you, to you understand the things that you are thinking about, you know, to make schemes, to take visual notes, is something that can help you to make to create clearness and transparency in your thinking process. And there is a very nice book that I have here. It is called Drawing as a Human Practice by D.B. Dowd. I don't know how do you pronounce it, but I can send it to you as a reference afterwards. And it's a very nice book that really talks about, for, I don't know, 200 pages about this thing, about the fact that you don't need to be a skilled artist to draw, not at all. And that drawing can really help you to understand things and to communicate things to everyone else. And also another thing that I would like to say about this is that when you draw something, for example, you want to draw an animal, and you just, for example, what I do is to look for a picture on Google and try to copy it. And but when I try to copy it, it's just a visual reference. But you really don't want to make it the same. Yeah, so that would be a skill. But you don't need to make it the same, because otherwise you would just get a picture, a photograph, and, you know, paste it, for example, on your PowerPoint presentation. The nice thing of drawing is that you actually, when you draw, you you translate your own perception of your brain and your eyes onto the paper. And so for example, when you draw a house and you do, you know, the triangle and square thing, you actually translate onto the paper your own mental idea and perception of a house. And what is nice and is that this is the same for everybody. Everybody, if wants to draw a house, we do it in the same way. So you're really talking as a little bit like in the example of the overlapping brain. When you draw something simple, something which is not mimetic, you try not to really copy what you see, but you put on to the paper your perception of it will overlap with the perception of everybody else, basically. Like for example, the other day I was playing a game on to the internet, like an AI that was trying that the objective of the AI was to guess your drawing. So you get a word, for example, house or person, but even more complicated word, and then you try to draw it, and the AI must guess. And it was incredible because the AI was guessing the word like almost right away, and then you could see how the AI was guessing the word. Well, of course, through a database of drawing by people of the same word. So, and it's incredible. You see that all the drawings are always the same for everybody, because they are drawings done very, very fast. They are all the same. So it's like, it's really in this sense, using drawing and images in this sense is really human language. Okay, I have stopped talking about this. So what was I saying? Okay, so when you let's see, here you have to for example, make a symbol represent warming Arctic, ice cap melting, and cold weather. Of course, you could think of you know, representing the Arctic geographically, you know, a map of the Arctic. The planet Earth with an arrow here is the Arctic. And cold weather, you can imagine the same in North America and Europe. You can imagine a map as well. With arrows pointing on North America and Europe, you can do, you know, make it a little bit hotter with some red or yellow, orange color to signify that it's hot. Cold, sorry, I meant blue and this kind of color palette. But what is more appealing in this case to another human being is to try to represent emotions while representing, for instance, a problem. Warming Arctic is a problem. Cold weather, if depends from warming Arctic, is a problem. And you represent emotions through people, basically, and animals, so faces. Because here again, we are really hardwired to perceive emotions on the face and expressions of people and animals. For example, if you think about it, when you look at the clouds, forming shapes, you never see a computer, you never see a book, you never see a, I don't know, anything that is abstract. You always see animals, always, because we are really hardwired to see life around us. And also there is, for example, there is something called pareidolia. When you see really simple shapes, like you see two dots and one line, your brain is hardwired to perceive a face, because we have to be good in reading emotions to be with each other, to communicate with each other. So for example, we have two problems, and to symbolize them, I chose an animal for the Arctic, a bear, and I just, you know, looked for a Google picture of a bear which seems very miserable about his ice melting, and you have an emotion and you have an animal. I'm very ashamed as the first animal I saw of a penguin, but okay. So I went for a beer. And then cold weather, I chose a human being, and it's a human being who is cold and covered in snow. A parenthesis about drawing human beings. You really can do it with stick figures. What is nice about stick figures is that, and you can convey emotion very easily. You know, you just do a face like this, it's sad. Like this is happy. What is nice about stick figures, and this is something that is very, very useful for me in my work at Riva, maybe a little bit less for you, I don't know, is that you can really represent people in general, universally, with stick figures. You don't have to specify gender or ethnicity or age, nothing at all. And this is useful because for two reasons. First, because people can identify very easily, all kinds of people can identify in the stick figures. And from the research point of view, very, very often you have to, maybe not in polar sciences or in climate related sciences, but for example in sociology, psychology, medical sciences as well, you really have to represent a human being without any specific features. And that is something that you can do only through drawings. You cannot do it through a picture or through a movie. So this is one example of how much drawing can be powerful as a communication medium. Okay, anyway, this is our end. But therefore, this is our end, a situation and a question. Then I went on with a but the gulf between observational and modeling studies is huge. And I try to maintain the structure, the double structure between there is one thing, another thing, there is, here there is a causality, maybe relationship, and here there is maybe, no, there is for sure here a diversity relationship. They do not fit together, they are different. To represent observation versus modeling, I chose to do it with symbols, not with emotions. And symbols, so I did like this with a loop. No, loop is French, it's a lens, I think, and a computer. Okay, so symbols like stick figures for emotions are really something very, very simple. They are some kind of alphabet that you can, if you begin to think about it, you can really use symbols as alphabet. I can send you afterwards some tutorials about graphic recording, in which there are graphic recorders that really make a list of symbols that you're going to use, because they are basically everywhere actually in each presentation, in each paper, in each text. Observation, I usually use this kind of lens. I don't know if it's called a lens, but you know what I mean, because it's physical, it's in the real world. Modeling, it's a computer. Very, very easy, very basic. The idea, of course, is the light bulb. Very easily with a rectangle and some lines, you can represent a city, a building. Very easy with a stick figure, so you can represent people. So you can make up your own dictionary of visual symbols to represent concepts that you're really going to use all the time, like observation, modeling, planet Earth, of course, with colors. So symbols. Then here we have therefore our solution. A new class of high resolution models might make all the difference. In this case, we have seen emotions, symbols, and in this case, I wanted to use an analogy or a metaphor to represent this. So what is an analogy? Someone is asking, Agatha is asking me, which program software do you use? This one is Procreate, which costs 10 euros on a tablet. But it's really nice. I think it's really, really nice if you can do it, for example, really analogically with a pen, with some pencils like this. The fact that something is handmade, it's something that really speaks to people. This I had to do it with a computer, with a program, with a software, because when we were at AAAS, they didn't, and the speaker were talking, they didn't give us paper and pen, but they gave us a tablet connected to a projector. So we had to do it digitally, but you can do it by hand, really. Procreate, but you can, which is really, really, really nice and intuitive, but you have to use it with a tablet, with an Apple iPad, something like that. So maybe it's something that maybe you don't have. It's not something that everybody has. It's something that usually, I don't know, graphic designers have. But if you have a tablet like this, then you get a pen like this, and you work and you draw as you were. If you had a paper, and it's super easy. 10 euros, so $10. Very nice. Okay, so the analogy is or the metaphor, and I'm never sure about the difference. is taking a concept and translate it to another level of communication. Taking an object, transform it to something else, to explain a concept in an easy way. For example, here, a high resolution model, of course, is something that is very complicated. I don't understand it. It's something, I don't know what it means, a high resolution model regarding the climate. I can only imagine that there are really a lot of parameters taken into account. What I have chosen to do is to take the analogy of a visual analogy of a JPEG or PNG images with a lot of pixels and transform it into something that is more smooth and is less pixelated. I don't know if you say that in English, pixelated, but it's a very, very, very simple thing. You know, it's something that is blurred and you don't really see well, transform it into something that is high resolution. And this is the final result. And I give you some other example of analogies and metaphors that I did for the same graphic recording session in Seattle. This illustration was for a project called Opera, that was studying ecosystems and the value of ecosystems. So to represent ecosystems, I made up an analogy with I don't know how you call them, snowballs or crystal balls. Anyway, the thing that you buy if you want, as the tacky thing that you buy when you are a tourist and you go to a place. And I thought it could represent nicely an ecosystem, because an ecosystem is something. It's really a system where you have many components. So you can have natural components like a specific climate, specific animals, the human know-how and culture to make cheese out of cow's milk, and a special kind of cows that really can live only in that region, and and all these snowballs or crystal balls or these things, they have a value which is not only economic, but it can be cultural, etc. So this was the analogy. Another example is this other project was called Esmeralda. And the objective of this project was to share knowledge about ecosystems, but also about policy for climate, about networking, all kinds of things. So here, for example, I use the analogy of the kiosk that share knowledge because the kiosk share newspapers, just like this project share knowledge with a lot of different actors, the general public, policymakers, other researchers, and institutions. Last example, no, it's not last one. Another example of analogy, this was a presentation about land policy, and the analogy is the game of Monopoly. I think you call it in English, I'm not sure. So the presentation was about how different things has to be taken into account and then can influence land policy. For example, a new policy, or for example, the way in which public transport is organized, green areas, a new park, the economic interest of builders, a natural event like a flood, schools, a new planning idea, new houses, high population density, etc. So the idea is, I think everybody has played to this game, is to have a go, and then to build up your city. Let's say you have to take into account all these things that you can decide or that can just happen. And these are just two other examples that in the same occasion in Seattle were done by my colleagues. And it's another example of analogy. This is by Francesco Guarnaccia, this guy here. So he did this drawing for a presentation that was talking about AI robots work. So as an analogy, he took the very, very famous picture launch atop of a skyscraper. I think it's the title, but you all know it. It's a knowledge which is shared with the New York building constructor workers eating their lunch on this aerial metal structure, and he put robots on it. So it's a very nice analogy. And this is by the other artist, Lorenzo Palloni, that's him. And what he did, it was an analogy for a presentation talking about maritime, I think you say, cultural heritage. So the analogy is with a book. A book is the symbol, the example of cultural heritage, and it is transformed into a sea with a boat. And here you have another very clear analogy. This is the final illustration, in which for the warming Arctic causing cold weather presentation. And here you can see all the and, but, and therefore together in this structure. The last thing, technical thing, but it's funny, regarding the color palette. I think it's always better to restrain the color palette, not to exaggerate with too much color, because it can get confusing and not very aesthetic, or not very nice. So for example, to have ideas about the colors that I would like to use, I use this website that is called coolers.co, and here, for example, you can just and here you have colors that kind of fit together very nicely.
Sorry to interrupt, Fiammetta. It's just to remind you that we have only 25 minutes left.
Okay, it's the end. I just wanted to show you the website because I like it. You just do
No,
space bar. Oh, it's okay. You just do a space bar and you create a palette, and then you can lock colors. So for example, if you're looking for a blue to represent ice or the ocean, you can lock the color, and then and you go on clicking spacebar, and the website is going to propose you other colors that fit, that are in harmony with the color that you've chosen. So for example, you want a green for the earth, and then you just go on and on, etc. So this is nice. And no, yeah, so that's it. So that's it if you want to discuss, and maybe okay, we don't have a lot of time, but I think we could try to
Yes, so maybe we can see, we have here an abstract in the comment section by Agatha. I think that we could see it. She's very enthusiastic to have your comments. The background harbor porpoise. So I can.
Okay. That harbor porpoise is under protection, and the mouth of Rio Douro River was never reported as part of its range of distribution, but we discover a small group of porpoise in this area overlapping with human activities, making the porpoise group more susceptible to anthropogenic threats. Therefore, more studies in the area is needed to improve the conservation management of this group. Once is the first record in the scientific history, this record. Okay, I will copy it. I don't know what a porpoise is. I'm sorry. Okay, we are going to check this out. It's a dolphin.
It's kind of a dolphin, yeah.
Okay, dolphin is nice. I cannot cannot paste it. Okay. Okay. So the harbor porpoise is under protection. Okay, so let me see what does it look like. Okay, so it's the dolphin with a little bit of round nose. So it's very nice. For sure, in your drawing, you will have to have this kind of porpoise. I hope I pronounce it right. I'm not sure. But for sure, you're going to have one of those. And they are small. No, they are not that small. Let me see. Is under protection. And the mouth of Rio Douro River was never reported as part of its range of distribution. So we didn't know that there were this kind of dolphin were in Rio Douro, which I assume it's a river somewhere.
Just to remind Agatha, if you want, you can use your mic to explain to Fiammetta. Maybe it's better.
Okay, sorry. Yes. We never heard about this species here in Portugal, in the Rio Douro River. Sorry, I wrote so quickly and I have a lot of errors there. This is the common species, the smallest marine mammal, cetacean here in Portugal and North Atlantic actually. And once I was there in the mouth of Douro River and I saw a group of porpoises, and actually between the group has a individual that is white, totally white. It's a normally individual. So we made like a monitoring program in the area, and we discovered that these animals are there with some frequency and overlapping with human activities. And we need to do something. We are trying to study why they are there and how many they are. And we discovered that besides the porpoises, we are seeing other species of dolphins. For example, the bottlenose, the common dolphin, the grampus, the rhesus dolphin. And I tried to do the ABT from the paper that we published last year, and this is the results. I don't know.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So so we know that we discovered actually that the porpoise also river in Rio Douro, and we didn't know it before. But this creates a problem for the porpoise because they are living with humans, so they are vulnerable to anthropogenic threats, right? So so they are in danger because they are there. And then we have to improve the conservation management of those animals and that area. And then one thing I don't understand, once is the first record in the scientific history?
Yes, we published with the first record in that area. It's a scientific. I would like to say in the history of the papers and the publishing. I don't know, data set. We can't find news about these animals in that area. Of course, they occur in all Portugal water, in the continental waters, but not here. So it's the first record. I try, sorry, my English is terrible.
No, not at all. No, not at all. This part I would put it, for example, in the end at the beginning, because it's really like attention grabbing. It's like
yeah, correct.
for the first time in the natural history, we can say, we have found the porpoise in this place. So it's really like it's big deal, you know. And then yeah, it's also very, very clear because there is a actual danger, and then there is something that you can do about it.
Maybe to put the yes, the first record in the first part, and the harbor porpoise is under protection, and therefore we know that they are under protection.
Yeah, I would say something like
yes, good.
Yeah, was never reported as part of this range distribution. You can transform it into something more dramatic, let's say, like for the first time, I'm just writing, like thinking out loud, but for the first time, we discovered porpoises in the Rio Douro, something like that. And then harbor porpoise is the species is under protection. So I would put an and. Yeah, then I'm just writing explicitly and but therefore, but you don't have to actually do it. I think maybe it's even stronger if you don't do it, or you can use synonyms, of course. The thing is that this structure speaks to people. They immediately understand that we are telling a story, I think. So I'm just writing it in an explicit way because it's easier to follow and to think in terms of template. And we know that harbor porpoise is under protection. And so for the first time in scientific history or something like that, we can really something like that.
I'd like to use it scientific here because for the scientific is the first time that we record that, but the fishermen, the people that use that area, of course, know about this.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's the right way, but something like that.
That is something that is nice as well. Irina is. I will read your comment right away. This is nice because it also tells a story and it's some kind of nesting of ABT. What is also nice is nesting small ABT into your big ABT. So your big ABT is, okay, first time porpoises, but danger, therefore we have to do something about it. You can have small ABT, and then a small ABT can be, for example, fishermen always knew that you had these small dolphins. Maybe they even didn't know that they were called porpoises. I don't know. Maybe they have a popular name in Portugal, for sure, I guess.
Yes, boto.
Boto. Okay, so fishermen knew that there were boto in the sea, but but researcher they didn't. So this is a small story, you see, and we find them for the first time in scientific history, so it's a big deal. No, that's the only thing that I wanted to say. And so, of course, for an illustration, I would of course think of the porpoise, and I would need to think of it. If you want to try, and then we can discuss also by email later on. But I would imagine a porpoise in danger, and I would imagine a section of the sea, of the river, and I would for sure imagine some human activity like fishing, and maybe there are other kind of human activities.
Tourism and a lot of vessels traffic.
So other human activity that endanger bottles, that is something that it could be nice to visualize, I think. And then and then a way to make them safe to election.
Yes, it would be perfect.
Something like that. And I will just, I think we have 10 minutes, so I will just read Irina that says we can try to apply the analogy metaphor idea and question for public outreach. Your project, so Irina, connects several seemingly difficult to connect phenomena. And the project is about a hydrological cycle, Atlantic interaction, Antarctic, and observations you made during the circumnavigation expedition around Antarctica, understanding transport of moisture via atmospheric rivers to Antarctic information of precipitation, and applying similar methods and knowledge acquired in Antarctica to merge this knowledge about climate in North Atlantic to study similar atmospheric river events in Portugal, 2 different regions, similar events applying similar model physics for clouds and precipitation. Yeah, I can imagine that, for example, what you are writing here, you have a lot of and things that are similar. But of course, I don't know your project, so it's difficult to say, but I can imagine that you could have a maps of your 2 geographical areas of interest, which, as far as I understand, are Antarctica, and but you also have Portugal and North Atlantic, and like have the 3 area with things that are happening on the area. So, for example, precipitation, rain, hydrological cycle, and I can show you something else maybe. In this period with Riva Illustration, I've been working on a series of illustration about for a French institution which is called EPSL. They are a big research institution, and they have 8 labs, and each lab works on a specific area of climate change science. And for example, I can show you some idea to visualize this kind of, for Irina, various ideas to visualize this kind of events, like the hydrological cycle or the climate events or precipitation, this kind of things. So it's sketches. We don't have the illustration are by an artist. Her name is Maddalena Carrai, and these are just the sketches. So it's a really first time that someone is looking at them. For example, one lab is about paleoclimatology. The idea was to show that in the carrots, I think the samples, I don't know if you, how do you, I think carrots, the samples. Sorry?
Carottes en français, oui, c'est les ice cores. Ice cores, yeah.
Ice cores?
Core. C-O-R-E, core.
Ice cores. Yeah, carrot is French.
Yeah,
it's a work that I'm doing in French. So that in the ice cores you can find traces of ancient climates, and so you will have in the final illustration, you will have fossils and molecules as well. You can represent molecules as you usually. This is for Irina, who has to represent for the hydrological cycle. You can represent molecules in the way that they are represented in science. They are already translated in a visual way. For example, here, this is not the last version yet. Yeah, because here, for example, we changed the molecules to make them more, because we have more kind of elements. We have CO. Okay, you know them better than me, CO4 and CO2, and the illustration represents, for example, a cycle in terms of of agriculture. So the biology and the chemistry of human landscape. So basically, land which is exploited by agriculture, but in terms of cycle, also with precipitations and pollution factors, so molecules in this sense. This is an example of how you can represent climate events. You don't have really, I think, to represent everything. You have just to, you know, give a symbol of it. For example, this is about an illustration about a lab which studies the cycle de l'eau, the cycle of water. You can really see very clearly just the cycle of water, and an external observator which represents the researcher, for example. I don't know if it was clear and if I answered to your question. This is another sketch about extreme events that we know that may be caused by climate change. And here again, you have the observation with the binoculars. Is another very used symbol because it really it's a symbol for research and observation. So these are other kind of analogies. You have biology and climate and chemistry in the sea. You have, for example, here again an observer with the binoculars, and here you have plankton, for example. Agatha was talking about plankton, so you have like a sample of plankton, which is part of her research, and animals. So maybe we have still 5 minutes for other questions or comments.
Well, thank you for this great example of colleagues in France.
Okay, Inge asks, what is the reference for the symbols that are commonly used in illustrations? I can send you some tutorials which are very nice for graphic recording, and I will just paste them here in the chat. If you look for this guy, for example, Benjamin Felis, he really gives you example of really, visual dictionary. It really tells you how to draw. I don't know how to. No, it's not. No, it's not this one. I mean, but he's the guy. You can really look a little bit of. No, there was another one which was nice.
See you soon. Hi, folks.
No,
Andy DeVille from work.
This one, it was the previous. Just one.
Yeah, what's up, everybody? Welcome.
Okay, so no. Okay, so for example, in this one, he's giving an example of how you can transform shapes, but really easily without you don't have any skills. What you can do about it, how you can transform it to use symbols that you can then use in your presentation. Here he is doing objects, for example, starting from shapes, and here you see you have a lot of symbols that you can use. You can have here the symbols to talk about city and urban settings. The earth, you can do it really easily because you don't have to be geographically accurate. It's everybody will understand right away that you are doing a planet Earth. You can do it really in a very abstract way. The idea is, of course, always the light bulb. It's really a universal language. He has made a lot of tutorials with symbols. Here you can see this is the symbol for dialogue, for discussion. And it also shows you that just adding another line of another color, you can make it graphically interesting. So it's nice, you know, with a really not a lot of effort. Here is the example that I was giving you of, to draw a city urban landscape. Hateful birds. Hateful birds. It was very nice. It was. I didn't. I didn't draw. We were working with an artist. The plus of working with professional artists is they really have this kind of talent for stories and visualization, and they just can come up with really nice ideas. Hateful Birds was a project of political psychology, and it was I will just try to talk about a little bit because it was really super interesting. I'll make it short. The idea was to of the comic was to talk about the fact that politics is very polarized this day, and during election time, and it's of course now it's worse than ever with what's going on in the US. There is a lot of polarization, and people really can hate each other basically. And the research project was researching really what happens among people in the society and how the society can be disrupted by this hate. The artist, Tuono Pettinato, came up with an idea of representing people with birds. And it was a super nice idea because birds, they have symbols for us humans. If you think about it, they, for example, all represent being knowledgeable and sage, I don't know how it is, wise. Dove represent peace, eagles represent aggressiveness and war, and pies, I think, I'm not sure of the names. There are birds that steal. You really have a lot of symbols that you can convey using birds. And on the other hand, you don't have the problem of representing age, or gender, or ethnicity. You know, so in that kind of, this is a very nice example of how drawings and comics can really help you to communicate something. The last thing, I will just give you the for Brazil with Bolsonaro, so I guess I know. And here you have the website of Riva Illustration. Here I have a video, an animation that if you want to check out later in 1 minute, just sums up what I've been talking about for 2 hours. And if you're interested into this thing about politics, which is very much the times, this is the link. It's a small comic, so you can read it and get an idea. Okay.
Thank
I
you,
really
Fiammetta.
try to make it short.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we are in the end of this session. Thank you very much for your presentation. I think it gives to us, to researchers, a really good perspective how it is important to know how to tell a story, even if it's writing or using drawings to communicate to people that are not aware of the science behind it. And in name for APECS and for all the people watching, thank you for your presentation. And I would like to invite everyone before lunch to open their webcams. And just one before, if you want to contact Fiammetta, you can go to her website and also to contact her via email if you have some questions. And if you want to and you are not shy, you can turn on your webcam, and then we can take a
Oh,
picture
hello.
of
It's
everyone.
it's nice to see you in person because I was imagining your your face. Now I can see it.
I think that you have to stop sharing your screen.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'll not have everyone. Okay. So just waiting for everyone. José Abreu.
Because you have
Yeah.
everybody else here. Yeah. Do I have to do something like change the?
No, it's fine. It's fine. Okay, so one print screen. Let me just paste it. Okay. And okay, done. Thank you very much.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank
Again.
you. It was very nice.
Have a nice lunch.
I would have loved to be actually with you in real life and in Portugal especially, but next time maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, so thanks to everybody and see you soon. I hope. Talk to you soon.
I don't know if Hugo wants to tell something because of the next session.
No, that's we are going to have lunch now, and we'll be back at 2 o'clock, 2:15 o'clock. So that you already said everything. Thank you, Fiammetta, for your presentation, and yes, we hope so that we can maybe next year or in the next, I don't know.
Somewhere sometimes.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
So thank you all. Good lunch.
Bye.
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 Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.